Verse 45. Trigunya visaya veda nistrigunya bhavarjuna nirdvandvo nitya sattvasto niryogaksema atmavan. The Vedas deal with subjects in the three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become free from duality, situated in a state of pure spiritual consciousness, free from the pursuits for gain and preservation, and thus you will transcend these three modes. Text 46. Yavanartha udapane sarvataha samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasha viganataha. A large lake serves all the purposes served by a small pond. Similarly, one who is the knower of the absolute truth realizes all the purposes found within the Vedas. Verse 47. Karmanye vadhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma karma pala heturbur mate sangos svakarmani. Your right is to perform your work, but never to the results. Never be motivated by the results of your actions, nor should you be attached to not performing your prescribed duties. Verse 48. Yogasta kuru karmani sangam chakva dhananjaya siddhyo asiddhyo samo bhutva samatman yoga uchate. O Dhananjaya, stand firm in yoga, perform your activities giving up attachment, and be equipoised in both success and failure. Such balance is known as yoga. Verse 49. Durena he varam karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhal sharanam anvicha kripana pala hetavaha. O Dhananjaya, fruit of activities are by far inferior to the yoga of wisdom. Therefore take shelter in the wisdom of equanimity. Those who are motivated by the fruit of results of their actions are misers. Verse 50. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukrita duskrite tasmad yogaya yudyasva yoga karma sukausalam. A wise man refrains from performing good and bad actions in this world. Thus engage in yoga, as yoga is the best of all activities. Verse 51. Karma jambudi yuktahi palam chakva manisnaha janma bandha vinirmukha padam gachanchanamayam. The wise give up the results of their actions and thus liberate themselves from the bondage of material birth and death. Thus they attain the plane beyond all suffering. Verse 52. Yadate moha kalilam buddhir viyati tarishati tadagantasi nirvedam shrotavasya shrutasya cha. Once your intelligence is able to pass through the dense jungle of illusion, you will become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is yet to be heard. Verse 53. Shruti vipratipanate yadastashati nischala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. When your mind is no longer affected by the false interpretations of the Vedas, then you will attain the perfect stage of yoga. Anubriti commentary by His Divine Grace, Jagad Swami, Bhakti Gaurava Narasingha Maharaj. To be situated in transcendence means to be liberated from the three modes of material nature, tamaguna, rajaguna, and sattvaguna, the modes of ignorance, passion, and goodness. Yoga is the practice of becoming situated beyond the modes of nature. Everyone in the material world is under the three modes of nature, and only a true yogi can surpass these modes. Our activities are categorized in three ways: as actions prescribed by the Vedas, karma; unauthorized action, vikarma; and transcendental action, akarma. Karma means those activities that derive a good result and sometimes promote one to higher planets or higher standards of living. Vikarma are those activities that are against the Vedic injunctions and cause suffering to the self and to other living entities. Akarma means those activities that have neither good nor bad reactions. One who is wise and who knows the science of yoga always strives to perform the activities of akarma. Such yogis are known as Bhakti yogis and can easily situate themselves in transcendence. Other systems of yoga, such as Ashtanga yoga, Raja yoga, Kundalini yoga, Hatha yoga, and Kriya yoga, can also reach transcendence, but the path is very difficult, especially in this modern age. Sri Krishna is known as Yogeshwara, the supreme master of yoga. And although Bhagavad Gita discusses other yoga systems, it is the Bhakti yoga system that Krishna ultimately recommends. The yogi situated in Bhakti yoga is always engaged in devotional activities to satisfy the supreme master of yoga, Sri Krishna. Thus, the Bhakti yogi is always in complete control of his senses. Without control of the senses, no one can perform meditation or engage in spiritual practices properly. Therefore, the Bhakti yogi is the topmost yogi because he is engaged in the topmost yoga system. There are 8 mystical perfections of yoga known as the Asta Siddhis. These perfections are Anima Siddhi, becoming very small; Lagima Siddhi, becoming lighter than air; Prapti Siddhi, being able to retrieve anything from anywhere, such as extending one's hand while in New York and picking a mango growing in India; Mahima Siddhi, to become heavier than the heaviest; Isitva Siddhi, to create something wonderful or to destroy anything at will; Vasitva Siddhi, to control the material elements; Prakamya Siddhi, the ability to fulfill all of one's desires; and Kama Vasayita Siddhi, the ability to assume any form one wishes. As the master of yoga, Krishna has these 8 yoga perfections in full. It is sometimes claimed by yogis that they have achieved one or more of these Asta Siddhis, and such seems to have been relatively common in ancient times. But in modern times, the claim of having one of the Asta Siddhis more often than not turns out to be fraudulent or simply a show to attract many followers. With the rise of popularity of yoga, false claims of Asta Siddhis have become a lucrative business. A higher aspiration for the yogi is not the achievement of the Asta Siddhis, but the achievement of Samadhi in Bhakti Yoga, because such achievement frees one from the cycle of birth and death. So I'll add a couple notes here. In this age of Kali Yuga, many false gurus appear, and sometimes they come and they feign these mystic yoga powers. In fact, sometimes they come and they may have some mystic yoga power. It's very rare, but sometimes they do. But they use these powers simply to control the people. They do not use them for good. So the accumulation of these mystic powers is not really a sign that someone may be very spiritually advanced. It just means that they have understood the technology behind the yoga system and how to manipulate it in order to control people. So it's not used for good. One person who did fake things very well was Sai Baba. He knew magic tricks, and he used these magic tricks to fool his followers into believing that he was doing such things as manifesting gold watches. So Satya, they called him Satya, but he wasn't Satya. They called him Satya Sai Baba. He would manifest a gold watch, and then he would give it to one of his very wealthy disciples, who, of course, in return would give him much more money than the gold watch was worth. For the poor people, he would do a magic trick and manifest ashes in his hand and give the poor people the ashes, Why not give the poor people the watches? Obviously, because the poor people can't give him a lot of money in return. So they only get the ashes. And then you have these other rascals. One really popular one in the West was Rajneesh. They called him Bhagavan. Bhagavan possesses all opulences and beauty. He's the most beautiful person. Krishna is the most beautiful person. Krishna is Bhagavan. Bhagavans don't need to cover their bald heads, okay? Krishna has long, beautiful black hair. He doesn't have to cover it up with a cap. So in this age of Kali Yuga, bald Bhagavans appear, but they're just buggers. They're just rascals, that's all. And sadly, even within the Krishna consciousness movement, many of these false gurus appear also. In fact, I can't give you the exact quote, but it is stated somewhere in the Veda that in the Kali Yuga, the biggest demons will appear as Vaishnavas. They will appear in the cloth of Vaishnavas in order to trick the people into believing that they are the real servants of Krishna, when in reality they are the servants of Maya, illusion, and they simply want to control and manipulate and exploit the people. Here in Mexico, just recently, some of these leaders were exposed in the ISKCON temple in Mexico City and other temples in South America. Many of the leaders simply have been posing as Vaishnavas while exploiting the women, using them for their own sexual pleasures. So these people are the greatest, actually, they're the greatest offenders to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his movement. And they should be punished severely. All those abusers should be punished. They should be called out. And those people who know about these things who do not call them out, also they are culpable. For those who want to sweep things under the rug, and for those who do not want to be honest about what is taking place in their temples and in their missions, they're culpable also. So many of these false gurus and leaders, while posing to be religious sadhus and saintly persons, they cannot follow the basic rules and regulations of a human being. In the Holy Bible, they are called wolves in the cloth of sheep. And in the Vedic scriptures, they are called Putanas. Putana was a beautiful witch who appeared to try to kill Krishna. Krishna, of course, is the original spiritual master from which all the Vedas spring, from which all knowledge comes. And Putana represents the false guru who comes to kill the truth, who does not want the truth, who wants to exploit the material nature for themselves and kill the actual guru who is delivering the absolute truth. The history of Putana can be found in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, and that is recommended reading for anybody who wants to distinguish between a real guru and a fake guru. The real guru is one who is heavy laden with love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And his or her crown jewel is humility and love for all other living entities as well as the Supreme Lord. When one loves Krishna, he will automatically love everyone. One may have vast knowledge of the Vedas, they may have mystic perfections, but if they don't have love for Krishna, then all of that is just a big zero. Sadly, in this Kali Yuga, the people are very, very gullible, they are less intelligent, and they're very easily fooled. If you want to see a movie that brings home this point, I would recommend that you watch the movie Kumari, the true story of a false prophet. The movie really brings home the point of how easy it is to fool people in this Kali Yuga. And so suffice it to say, buyer beware, be careful who you lend your ear to and who you listen to. At the end of the day, the bottom line is one gets a guru according to their desire. If one desires to know the absolute truth, then Krishna will make all arrangements. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Verse 54. Arjuna uvacha stita pragnasya kabasha samadhistasya keshava stita dikim prabhasheta kimashita brajeta kim. Arjuna said, O Keshava, what are the characteristics of that person who is perfectly situated in divine wisdom and fully absorbed in pure spiritual consciousness, samadhi? How does he speak? How does he sit? How does he walk? Verse 55. Sri Bhagavan uvacha prajati yada kaman sarvaparta manogatan Atman yevatmana tushta stiti pragnastadocate. Bhagavan Sri Krishna said, O Partha, when the living being abandons all material desires that enter the mind and becomes self-satisfied within, then that person is said to be situated in divine knowledge. Verse 56. Dukeshvanu vignamana sukeshu vigata spriyaha vitaraga bayat krodas ditadir muniruchate. One whose mind remains undisturbed by distress, who has no desire for pleasure, who is free from mundane attachment, fear, and anger, is a sage of steady mind. Verse 57. Ya sarvatrana visnihas tatat prapja subasubam nabhinandati nadvesti tasha pragna pratistita. One who is unattached to anything in this world and who does not become joyful or resentful on attaining good or evil is firmly established in wisdom. Text 58. Yada samharate chayam kurmon ganiva sarvashaha indriyan tebyas tasha pragna pratistita. When one is able to withdraw the senses from sense objects, just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs, then he is firmly established in wisdom. Verse 59. Vishaya vinivartante nirabarashadihina rasavarjam rasapyasya param drisva nivaritate. An embodied living being may renounce sense objects, but the taste for enjoying them remains. However, this too also ceases for one who realizes the Supreme. Verse 60. Yatato heyape kunteya purushasha vapaschitaha indriyani pramatini harante prashabamanaha. Yet the turbulent senses can forcibly steal the mind of even a wise man of sound judgment, O son of Kunti. Verse 61. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta ashita matparaha vasiheya shindriyani tasha pragna pratistita. Restraining all the senses, a self-controlled person should fix his mind upon me. Thus, he becomes firmly situated in divine knowledge. Anuriti, commentary by Jagad Swami Bhakti Gaurava Narasingha Maharaj. As previously stated, there are numerous yoga systems. Sri Krishna states unequivocally that by the system of withdrawing one's senses from the objects of the senses, namely sound, touch, taste, smell, and sight, for sense satisfaction and concentrating the mind on Him, one becomes firmly situated in divine knowledge and samadhi. Simply suspending the senses without positive engagement for advancing in spiritual life is not very profitable. Many yogis have tried giving up sense activities altogether, but because the taste or attachment for sense objects remains, many have fallen down in their attempts. However, the senses of the bhakti yogi who follows Krishna's directions are safeguarded because the senses are engaged 24 hours a day in Krishna's service. As such, the taste for sensual satisfaction gradually dries up and disappears, leaving the bhakti yogi free to advance spiritually. One who cannot control the senses cannot concentrate the mind. Additionally, the senses are never actually satisfied by material engagement. The senses become satiated for some time, but then again become stimulated with an even greater avarice. Those who are servants of the bodily senses can never become masters of the self. Being fully absorbed in pure spiritual consciousness or samadhi means to be conscious of Krishna as the Supreme Person. Such absorption of the mind and senses in Krishna is called Krishna consciousness. We'll add a short note to this segment. Sometimes the material senses are compared to spoiled little brats. You know, no matter what you give a spoiled brat, he won't be satisfied. He always wants more. Similarly, the material senses, no matter what you give them, they always want more. You give them pizza, they want ice cream. You give them ice cream, they want soda. They're always wanting more and more, and they're never satisfied. When you take the natural tendency of the senses to be engaged and engage them in Krishna's service, then they become controlled and no longer act as spoiled brats, but instead they act in the service of Krishna and thereby elevate the Alma, the living entity, the soul. If one takes seriously the practice of Bhakti Yoga, engaging in sadhana practices, then eventually one becomes Swami. Go means senses, and Swami means master. So one becomes a master of the senses. And so long as one lives in the material world as the servant of the senses, he cannot make any spiritual progress because you cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve your senses and serve Krishna at the same time. It is not possible. However, you can engage the senses in the service of Krishna and thereby purify the senses, the soul, the mind, the heart, everything.